Hey guys, this is Kevin Smith Jr., your host for the Container Happy Hour. Grab a drink, join us every 2 weeks, and we'll talk containers and future of the market.
Hey D, what's up, my friend?
How you doing, buddy? How you doing?
Oh,
my
it's
son,
good to see you.
how you doing?
Yes, I'm here. Ladies and gentlemen, episode 10 of the Container Happy Hour with my good buddy, Danny Lesa.
Likewise, good buddy, KJ. Cheers, friend. Cheers. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking what you said, the Defiant, right?
Yeah, you found it?
Yeah, I had to go to 2 places, but I found it.
No kidding. I haven't found it retail yet. We have friends in North Carolina. Every time they come visit, we ask them to bring 4 or 5 bottles for us. We're down to our last one, so we got to invite them back.
So if you guys are watching, we're ready for a visit. But
Exactly.
No, we've got a big place called Specs down here, and they actually didn't have it. I thought for sure they would. But I went to a little small retailer called Total Wine, and it seems like they have all the one-off stuff. So success.
How do you like it?
I enjoy it. Yeah, it's good.
It's not bad. Not bad. It's priced right, and it's not bad. You know, I can see a golf ball at 300 yards, but I can barely see the screen, so I got to put on my glasses. It's crazy.
So who are you lying to that you're hitting 300 yards?
If the reflection gets too bright, let me know.
Yeah, but can we go back to the lie you just told about hitting the ball 300 yards?
I said I can see one at 300.
Okay.
Not one that I hit.
Okay.
Yeah, it takes me 2 tries to hit 300 yards.
I appreciate the honesty.
Yeah.
So
that's another thing that retirement is good for. You know, people say, what are you going to do? Play golf all day? No, but I can go when I want.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have to worry about work or anything. So it's pretty cool.
Exactly. Yeah, let's start at the back end and go forward then. So you're recently retired from our crazy industry.
Last July, after 42 years. I started in the business July 1978. So 42 years. I'll give you a little background.
Okay, lay it on.
Yeah, just my first job was, like I said, July 1978. It was in New York when I still lived in New York, and I worked for a Brazilian shipping company that went up and down the U.S. East Coast and a couple of places in Brazil. And I got the job mainly because I knew nothing about containers. You know, containers was Tupperware to me. You know, I didn't know what it was. But the interview went horribly. And at the end of it, we just kind of like, nobody wanted to finish it on a sour note. So he asked me, hey, actually my brother-in-law who worked next door, for a different company, he recommended me for the job, or suggested I go interview for the job, I should say. Anyway, he goes, well, how do you know Sam, who's my brother-in-law? Well, you know, we grew up together in Croatia. And he goes, oh, you're Croatian. And that started the conversation because he had a lot of Croatian friends, and a close friend of his wife happened to be Croatian. And 20 minutes later, before I left, I had the job. So I got the job, not because of my skills or knowledge, but to this day, I'm sure it was simply because, he's a Croatian. He's probably, you know, to him, it was like, you know, how bad can he be? You know, that's
literally a birthright.
Essentially, yeah. No, it was pretty good. I worked there for a couple of years, kind of hopped around, but my first real job was, I think, actually where I met your dad, 82, a Genstar. Okay. And that was I don't want to say real job, but in a way it was a real job. You know, there was serious corporate office, that kind of thing. And I got to know that my history from 1978 to 82 was really trial and error, learning by fire, you know, just made a lot of mistakes, people taking advantage of it. Because back in the late 70s, that was the Wild West, container leasing. You know, you go down to the depot. I remember going to one place that was Interpol, if you remember that leasing company, Interpol.
Yeah.
The name of the depot was Container Master, and you walk in there and they had 2 junkyard dogs to greet you. That was the first thing. And I was going to say hotel manager. The depot manager would come out with a baseball bat and say, "What do you want?" That was you know, that was your greeting to this place. And I knew nothing about it. You know, I knew nothing about how to survey containers, what's damaged, what isn't, you know, all that. So I got taken advantage, but I learned. I learned as we went along, and made some friends who helped guide me and that kind of thing. So my first real job, so to speak, was with Genstar. That lasted that was a little over 3 years, I think, something like that. And I liked it. I got to know a lot. The guy I worked for, I won't mention his name, but the guy I worked for was a real uh, stickler, shall we say? He was like a real, everything by the book, and there was no deviation. There was nothing. You just got to do it this way, and this way was his way. So you had to do everything, that way. And then an opportunity came along with IEA, and I was there for about 5 years, which is now Kronos when they merged in the early 90s. That was probably the best job I ever had, was the 5 years that I spent with IEA, mainly because the 80s were leasing company heyday. Everybody was making money. It was you couldn't lose money. You had to be a real a-hole to lose money in 1988 if you were a leasing company. Anyway, and most of the people there, with the exception of a few senior managers, we were all in our early 30s. So, everybody was kind of the same, everybody working to the same goal. And that old saying, it sounds like a cliche, work hard, party hard, but it was so true. So when you went, when you went out afterward, or there was a company party or something like that, it was a party. It wasn't just you rehash the day's events or talk about what you're going to do tomorrow, work related. I mean, work was left at the door. You just went and you partied. And again, when you're in your 30s, as you well know, those days are gone for me. But when you're in your 30s, your stamina is very different. Your tolerance is very different, all that stuff. And the thing that impressed me quite a bit about IEA was their honesty. And that's really saying a lot, because my experience has been that not everybody's honest. And their management the goals were clear cut. This is what you need to do. They treated everybody fairly. It was just really, the first marketing meeting we had, 1987, January of 87, we went to Bali in Indonesia. I mean, Bali, come on. It's not like going to Milpitas, California, or, Oak Grove, Chicago, Illinois or something. I mean, you went, and then another time was Singapore, and another time was Thailand, so it was pretty cool. But anyway, that was kind of where I cut my teeth on the leasing business, because I really, even though I was their technical manager, eventually I moved to operations director. So I got to know the technical side, as well as I do. That doesn't take very long to learn. Study a little bit, you got it. It's not that difficult. Operations, that took a little bit longer, but it was a great training ground, because if I made a mistake, I didn't get chewed out. It was just, hey, Danny, this was wrong. You need to do it this way. And you move on, So that kind of thing was really good. From there, I left IEA when it merged with Kronos, because even though I got a promotion to a VP of operations, they wanted me to move to London. And I was willing to do it on an assignment basis, like a couple of years, and then I have a job waiting for me back in San Francisco or something. And that wasn't in the cards. So I left. I just left. And I don't know if you know Tony Sowery, or the name. He was a Textainer. Okay, Tony Sowery.
Yep.
He recommended me for a job with a company that was an agent for container manufacturers in China. And Textainer happened to be one of the clients for this company. And I went for the interview and I got the job, and it was a marketing job. So, people like Textainer and Peter Oborg that's another name from the past. But, they were my customers. Capital was a huge customer out of Germany for me. So on that side, I got to know the manufacturing end of it and develop a lot of contacts in China. And irrespective of what many people say, most of them are good, honest people. But anywhere in life, you got to be careful. Some of them, but that's no different than it is here. You just have to be judicious in who you choose to be your friends with. Right. And I made a lot of contacts, and that helped me a lot when this company, this marketing company in 2001 or no, 2004, they, it's a really long story that I don't want to get into. But let's just say the company closed shop. So while I was with that company, we started bringing new containers into the States for resale. We were probably one of the first at that time. We're going back again, early 90s. Not many people were doing that. And I thought, hey, I can do that. I know a lot of manufacturers. I can order containers myself. I can do this, and with the contacts that I had at domestic leasing companies, the depots, the new manufacturers, I started NorCal, which was my equipment trading, container trading.
Right.
I did that for, I don't know, 12, 13 years. And it was probably really good timing on my part because that was also kind of like the heyday for container trading. I mean, talk to anybody, talk to Phil Herden, talk to guys who've been around for 20, 30 years. When you're making $500, $600, $700 on a transaction, you don't have to work that hard, to make a comfortable living. And that was always my goal. Believe it or not, my goal wasn't, I didn't want to be number one. Not that I'm not ambitious. Hey, I like to make a buck just as much as the next guy. But my goal was balance personal life and make a comfortable living. And that provided me with that equation. So, I did that for years and years. And, again, probably about 13, 14 years. And then I was recruited by UES, the Chinese-based leasing company. Actually, you may know him, John de Blasi. Do you know John de Blasi?
Of course, yeah.
John threw my name in the hat, as did one of my ex-IEA colleagues who was an investor in UES at that time. Threw my name into the ring. Hey, you should hire this guy as a general manager to overlook sales and, build up the company and all this stuff. Anyway, that was good. That was good from a managerial perspective because I really had the opportunity to manage people and learn that part of the business. That lasted 5 years. Yeah, no, a little over 4 years. I left there because, let's just say I didn't see eye to eye towards the end, and I didn't care. I didn't care if the job was like, I could take it or leave it. I hate to say that about any job, but sometimes you get to that point where it's like, I don't really need the headaches from all this, So I went back to trading for a little while, a few years. And then I was recruited again by Florence. And you meant Mark De Pasquale. Since, he worked there. So Mark, hey, these guys are talking to me. Lesa Hall. Hey, Lesa, these guys are talking to me, and everybody's saying, yeah, even your dad. I talked to your dad about this at some length, and he said, Danny, do it. They need somebody, do it. Yeah, that was like a cup of coffee. That lasted 2 months. It was just a disaster. And this you can keep or cut out. But the reason I left was because I was lied to. That's why I left. And I just said, okay, enough of this. If this is the way it's going to be from now on, I don't want any part of it. And I didn't need it. I didn't need it.
Right.
Went back to trading for about a year at the request of, when I worked for UES, I made two very good, they're still my friends. Our families know each other and all that. They're still my friends, who both left UES to start container trading. And they both approached me at that time when they knew I left Florence. Hey, Danny, I know you're not there anymore. We're going to start selling containers in the US. Do you want to do, can you help us out? I said, I'll do it, but I'm not in this for the long term. But once you're on your feet, chances are I'm going to leave. And that's exactly what happened. A year and a half later, they got on their feet. They're doing great. They're thriving. They made their own connections besides me. I gave them a few customers. And then in July, I said, okay, enough. My grandson was 3 at the time. I said, I only probably have 2-3 more years of being with him before he goes to school, real school, not preschool, daycare,
Right.
but real school, and then he's going to make friends, and grandpa's in the background. So he's second on the totem pole. So that's kind of a long-winded answer of well, actually, it's not that long. It covers 42 years, so it's not it wasn't a really long answer. But yeah, that's kind of my history. So I've done the manufacturing, done the leasing, done the trading, done the technical. My background was pretty good, and I'm very, very grateful for that. I'm grateful to the people who did help me. When IICL, the organization, when that was in its heyday in the 80s and 90s, and I one time I was their vice chairman. Those guys were so good. Everybody who was on that committee was so eager to help and guide and give encouragement and guidance. That kind of situation, I feel very fortunate because, yeah, I hit a few bumps along the road, but for the most part, people were pretty good to me. Were pretty good to me. And I have to say, in return, I was to them. My goal was always, be honest with it. You and I have done business. It didn't always work out 100% the way we wanted it, but I don't think I ever tried to cheat you. It was always, you do what you can, you try to be honest with it. And that's the way I was with, everybody. And I have to say that came, that kind of came back to me too. And you're starting to get fuzzy again, so I got to put on my glasses.
Get those on.
It's either that or the scotch, one or the other.
You successfully put 42 years into like 15 minutes, so that was pretty impressive. No, not bad. But I think that it's worth noting that you talked about people being honest in those eras, and you appreciated that, and they looked after you, and you kind of paid it forward. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that you do that for a lot of the next wave, right? Because I can personally say that you were one of those guys that took me in early on and just said, I'll look after you. I'll make sure you know this versus this. I'll make sure you know how to structure this deal versus this deal. So obviously I appreciated that. And we've had many of those discussions through the years.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the kind words. I really do. But you can also, if you look back at the biodiesel days, that didn't work out so well.
That's actually on my notes here of things to discuss.
Get out of here.
No, it is. Because I was actually going to spin it for you and say that we're working on a project right now that's converting this container into a bioenergy production facility. So you were like a decade ahead of the time. Yeah, for real. We are working on it right now. So you're way ahead of the curve.
I was. Well, that was 2006, maybe. I think that's when I first met you. Maybe a little bit before that. No, I think that was it. I think that was when I first met you down in Houston. Yeah. Your dad wanted you to get in that business, and it was like, nah. Yeah.
I just remember trying to explain it to J. Michael.
I do too, actually. I do too. Now that you mention it, I do too. Sometimes I need to be reminded of these things, but yeah, I can't believe you had a note about the biodiesel thing.
I had to. We had shirts and everything.
Anyway, so all good stuff. How you coping? I want to go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, buddy. What's up?
I was going to ask you, how are you coping with the situation that's going on now? If I could ask you a question, with the container shortages, everything that's going on and all that stuff. How are you guys doing?
Really good question, and maybe a more long-winded answer than you anticipated. But
sorry, I asked.
We'll cut this out. It's fine. No one wants to hear me talk. You're the guest.
Probably not.
I think we were fortunate a few years ago when we kind of saw the writing on the wall for traditional depot activity and started steering away from that as our main vertical, right? I don't think that's any great shock to anyone that might watch this. And so we were poised for that to change, and certainly we couldn't prepare for the COVID changes and all the shortages and ramifications, but we had at least already shifted our model. So that was really fortunate for us. At this point, the modifications are our key vertical that most of what we do is focused on, and that's really important. And we have a much smaller team, and it's all hinged on technology, and it's hinged on keeping those projects going. And then we've been really lucky that we had a couple big factory orders placed on time and delivered to where it's kept us in stock, because right now That's the only name of the game right now, is do you even have the stock, right?
Yeah, and the pandemic certainly played a role, and there's a whole litany of reasons why all this stuff happened, dating back to starting last summer.
Right.
Um, and it's funny, well, not funny, haha, but funny because I remember last June when I was still trading, just before I retired, I had 3 containers that didn't end up being off hired. They were reused. And I haven't had 3 containers reused in 3 years, never mind in a space of weeks. And it made me start to think, in hindsight, especially now, and even late last year, why did that happen? Why did that happen? And it it came to realize that they reused it because it was beneficial for the carrier to bring an empty back to Asia than to off hire it in the States. The recovery in China, the post-pandemic, well, for them, a little bit of a post-pandemic, that's a bit of a misnomer, but they recovered a lot quicker than the US or Europe did. So their exports grew, the economy was growing. There were no new orders because the factories pretty much shut down the first half of the year. And it took time to ramp up to get the steel and get the wood and steel in particular, not so much the cost, KJ, but any steel factories that were ramping up for structural steel, that first went to the auto industry and the construction industry. Containers are down on the list, as to priority. Who's going to get this rare commodity now called steel? So that and the recovery, the exports, the shippers not wanting. I remember Hapag-Lloyd late last summer, early August, something like that. I remember they started rejecting containers that were not near the port in the U.S. I'm talking about the U.S. They wouldn't. A lot of U.S. export is agricultural products. Well, you have to go away from the port to load, and it's tedious loading the agricultural products. The value isn't as high as, let's say, televisions. So Hapag-Lloyd was, I think, one of the first who said, no, we're not doing that. We're just going to take the empties back to China. And instead of a $2,000 revenue move, I can get a $6,000 revenue move. So it makes complete sense for me to just bring the empties back, as many as we can. And eventually a lot of them followed suit. The Maersk lines, the Zim. Zim just went into a little financial news. Zim just went into the black for the first time in years in the last quarter, because their freight rates went from $1,000 to $1,500. So that's what, a 50%. I don't know. My math isn't very good, but it's a big increase. Put it that way.
I like that you're dropping financial news on us, but questioning your percentage calculations.
Yeah, exactly. I was never good at math. I was never good at math. When I first entered college, first of all, I was only 17, which was a mistake. I just turned 17, but my major was architecture. I thought, I'm going to draw houses for a living, until I found out there was a lot of math involved with that, geometry and angles. And nope. Go to home economics, learn to cook, do something like that.
Was this in New York? Because did you go from Croatia to New York?
Yeah, I was, it was when I was born, it was Yugoslavia. And Yugoslavia was a communist country. There was no free immigration. So you literally had to escape from the country. And I was 6 years old. My dad was already in the States. The old term was he jumped ship. In other words, he was in like the equivalent of the Merchant Marines type of thing. And they would navigate around the world, and they docked in New York one day, and he went on shore leave and never went back. And he established, he got a job and got some paperwork, albeit not 100% government issued paperwork, but he got paperwork that allowed him to stay here. And this was all done through the local church, believe it or not. It was like, it's like watching a 1940s war movie, like all this underground stuff and everything going on. And I remember, we traveled at night for 3 days to get from where I lived to the Italian border. And then we were in what they call an immigration camp, essentially a refugee camp, for about a year until my dad was able to save enough money and get some paperwork in order, get the flights, and then bring us to the States. And I remember when we got off the plane, my mom went to greet my dad, and obviously a big hug and a kiss because they hadn't seen each other in a while. And I remember asking my sister, who was a few years older than me, said, "Who's that man?" Because that was the first time. That's my first memory of my dad. I was 7 years old. He was always away. I knew from pictures and, vaguely, yeah, there's a man in my life when I was a child, but not, nothing specific. So anyway, yeah, then we went to New York, and that's where I grew up. And I moved out to California in '82. We moved out to California, Nancy and I, and Allison. Allison was 5 weeks old when we were moving, and that was with, I forgot to mention, one of my jobs was with Unicon. Remember the survey company, Unicon?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I worked for them in New York, and there was an opening on the West Coast, and I went out for 6 weeks to replace somebody. And when I was done, the guy who was my boss said, "Hey, Danny, you want to move out here permanently?" And, all I could think of, I am not a person who likes to be cold. There's no reason for man to be cold if he doesn't have to. So the chance to get out of New York to go to California, that was like a dream come true. And my family wasn't very happy about it. My daughter was 5 weeks old at the time. We were uprooting everything just for a job transfer. But I knew in my heart that it would be a good move, not only for me, but I knew that it would be a good move for our family. And as it turned out, it was. Ending up in Tennessee was not on my radar, but it's okay. I'm enjoying it here.
Tennessee's great too. And when you were in Northern California, I mean, shout out to Petaluma, because we all enjoy that, right?
There was I don't know what show we were watching, Nancy and I, my wife and I, but they met it's a show that's based in San Francisco. And one of the characters said, "Hey, we're driving up to Petaluma this weekend. Do you want to go?" I'm like, "Yeah, all right, Petaluma." Made the map. But you know what, KJ, we've been gone. We left just before the fires started, late 2017. And then every summer thereafter, it's just been a mess. So I have to say we're thankful for that, that we don't have to live through that.
Sure.
And, moving here, it clearly Tennessee is different from California, but it has a lot of pluses, and it has, just like anywhere you live, you got your pluses, your minuses. And the fact that my family is here, that makes it worthwhile. So
sure.
Yeah, but to answer your question, yeah, I grew up in New York and then eventually moved out to California. I don't miss New York. I miss California weather, particularly where we live. I miss the weather. I miss New York, the New York rhythm, the vibe. But other than that, not really. Not really. Kind of got used to it here.
Right.
Got used to it. Yeah.
So obviously you're retired and you're pushing on to the first year of that process, right? But yeah. I know for a fact that you stay very engaged, and I know that you talk to people about the industry, and I know you still read everything about the industry. And in fact, we still exchange emails about it. So what is your view of the craziness right now, and where you see new production pricing, and crystal ball for us the next half of the year? Because who cares? You can't be wrong or fired. So lay it out there.
Well, let's start with the easy stuff. New production. That's going to stay where it is for quite a while. And part of it is, KJ, and you've heard this before, and I'm sure I'm not the first person to say it, but new production is strictly the basic equation of supply and demand. Forget all the stuff about this is how much iron ore costs. This is how much bamboo flooring costs. Paint went up by 20%. All of that is fine and good, and it's real. But those numbers for example, iron ore, that's been hovering around $170 a ton for months and months and months. Meanwhile, the price of containers has gone up 10, 20, 30, 40, it just keeps going up and up and up. So what's a 20-foot container now? Somewhere around 3,000, give or take, maybe a little bit more, that kind of, yeah. Okay. So let's say it's even higher. That's not,
we're not all buying on behalf of large leasing companies here, buddy. I mean, be fair to the little guys.
But, it's not, yes, the raw material cost has its place, but the bottom line is always supply and demand. And it took a little time for the manufacturers to ramp up again. And then I mentioned steel, their container manufacturing was not on the priority list for when steel ramped up again and production started post-pandemic in China. But there's also a manufacturer's mentality of, and it's really not much different from where depots were at some point. A lot of it rolls downhill to the depot. And the same thing for container manufacturing. A lot of it rolls down. They're the last guys that benefit from, and generally speaking, because everybody beats on them. I need a lower price. I need a lower price. I'll up my order by 1,000 TEU. I needed, that kind of stuff. Well, now, and I can't say I blame them at all, as is their want, they're saying, well, we're just going to run with this and see how far it goes. And it's going to go for a while. It really is. For one thing, we've kind of passed peak season, November to March, in that regard. But we also coming into spring, which is traditionally a good time of year, followed by summer, another traditionally good time of year, and then towards the end of the summer, you're starting with the Christmas rush. It seems early,
retail.
But you are.
Yeah.
You really are.
Yeah,
and all of that is played against the backdrop of the pandemic, which is recovering. The economies are recovering. Not so much in in Europe. It's starting, but the U.S. seems to be recovering a little bit quicker. Parts of Asia are recovering a little bit quicker. But as the situation in the U.S. improves, presuming it continues on this track that we're on, you're looking at, they're forecasting a 10% GDP, another financial thing. This time I got the number right. They're forecasting about a 10%, GDP in the second quarter. That's huge. That is huge. So there's not going to be any shortage of pent up demand. The savings accounts are ballooning for the average American. If they're in the market, that's, up 30-40% since last April or something like that, maybe even a little bit more. So not everybody's flush with cash, but there's 3 rounds of stimulus checks that probably went into the bank for a lot of people. There's all this stuff that's creating a waiting for the floodgates to open. And that is going to keep demand for containers. And China shows no easing at all of their growth. I mean, yes, the numbers are smaller. They're not growing by double digits anymore, but even 3, 4, 5, 6, 7%, their exports are very healthy. They're still in the recovery mode. Once they're back to full steam ahead, they actually do more trade with Europe now than they do with the US, but the US is still a big market for them, presuming no political upheaval. It's just going to remain strong. It really is. I don't see any way around it, at least for the foreseeable future. And when I say that, I mean like towards the end of the summer.
Right.
Who knows? What if the pandemic resurfaces? I mean, who knows?
And then like you said, we hit retail Christmas season, and there's another demand flush. So
absolutely,
it's difficult to figure out there being a price drop or a utilization drop in this calendar year, because I don't see one.
Utilization is at or near theoretical maximum.
I was going to say, when you talk to people and explain that a leasing company is trading at 99%, it's almost impossible to explain to someone outside our industry. They go, how is that even feasible on a global trade scale? Right.
Yeah.
But here we are.
It is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Here we are. And, they're doing good. The lease rates are up, wherever they can. If they're smart, they get them up wherever they can. And just like the shippers, you go from 1,500 for a freight load to 6,000 on a spot basis. man, that's gravy. That's huge. That's
Sure.
huge. And freight rates will stabilize and will come down, but that's not going to affect the demand for containers. Because just to backtrack a little bit, when the pandemic hit and everybody was on a lockdown, there were a lot of vessels that were taken out of service because
Right.
what are you going to sail an empty ship for?
Right.
Once that capacity starts re-entering the global trade market, there's another demand for that. There's more demand for containers. So you have all the stuff that's, everything points to, yeah, this is where it's going to stay. And getting back to the container manufacturers, they have no reason, no incentive, nothing for them to lower their price because KJ, you don't want it. Well, okay, Danny's right behind you. He'll take them. So what do they care? And
Yeah.
I don't blame them at all. I'm happy for them. It's actually a good thing. Everybody bitches and moans about, oh, the price is $3,500 or whatever it is. So what? I've been here. I've been in the business long enough to just. I've seen those prices. I've
Yeah.
seen them before.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not unheard of. It's unusual given the climate that we've had the last 5, 6, 7 years. But it's not. It's not unheard of that container prices can be that high. And what you sell, I mean, it doesn't. Whether the container price at 1,000 or 3,000 or 5,000 doesn't matter because if you're in the trading business, that just goes to the next guy.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. It doesn't matter
because it's
as long as everyone
the prices
rises
across the
incrementally.
board. Yeah,
Right.
the prices, it's the same for everybody. So, yeah, there may be a sticker shock factor, but come on, get over it, move on.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, get
And
back to business kind of thing.
We're
But
so entrenched.
I hope that
right?
kind of answered your question. Where do I see, new container price? I think it's there. And as far as global trade and, again, you have to kind of place everything against the backdrop of what's going on with COVID and the variants that are out there and what's going on in the States. The cases are increasing. Brazil is going down the toilet with that stuff. India, the same thing. So is there, the UK may be coming out of lockdown next week or the week after. Italy is still messed up. Spain, so you could go on and on about the individual countries, but on a global scale, it's still out there. And is it going to get worse or is it going to stabilize and get better? Hopefully with the vaccination, what's the US at 25%, something like that now fully
I've read as
vaccinated?
high as 30, maybe.
Yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood. That's great. Let's get, once we get to 70, I think everybody will be a little bit more comfortable and all that. But my point is that presuming things don't get worse and the economy is going to recover, it should be pretty good for everybody involved, and it's going to last. It's going to last for a while. If I had to project, I'd say minimum 2-3 years, and then inflation is going to set in and things will backtrack and, we'll be back to moaning and all that kind of stuff. But enjoy the ride, enjoy the ride while you can, because it's going to last for a while. At least that's my view of it. That's my view. I think I made some sense out of it, but, that's kind of like, I think that's where, and you're right. I do keep in touch with people. Like I said, my ex-partners in China, both of them, I still keep in touch with them. As a matter of fact, I have one phone call scheduled for next week with them. Not frequently, but by email and, once in a while a phone call. I might ask them to do a video call, see if they're allowed to do a video call next time. Or if the government is still, they don't have Facebook. They don't have any of this stuff. When they visit the States, man, they are like thirsty for news, for what's going on, what's going on in the world instead of being spoon-fed information.
Right.
And again, that's not a knock on it. That's just the way it is over there,
Yeah,
so
that's the reality.
That's the reality of their life. And I think it'll last for a while. I really do. And I like to keep in touch. Once I in an email to you, which I think you got a kick out of, you asked me, why am I still reading all this stuff? And I said, I can't quit you. And that's kind of the way I feel about this business. Is like, after 42 years, man, it's in your blood, and I still have friends, people still call me every now and again and like, hey, Danny, what's going on? What do you hear? Most of the time they want to know what's going on, business related. They don't care about me, but I don't mind talking to them. I don't mind catching up with them, so it's okay. It's okay. And by the way, NPSA is going to have this virtual meeting for did you sign up for that?
Yes.
How's it going to work? I meant to call Mark. I actually have a note on my desk. Call Mark because I want to know how that's going to work. I'm not a member anymore, but obviously, but I'm curious how he plans to make that work. Anyway, we don't have to get into it now. I was just curious.
Yeah, I think it's going to be nice. I mean, it's going to be different, obviously, but I saw some of the previews of the actual setting and how it's all going to work as you kind of go into the room and listen to the speeches and all that kind of stuff. And it looks really cool. I mean, as far as what we're going to have available to us, obviously, I still hope that we go back to in-person conferences, and I hope that that's sooner than later.
I'd say next year that'll be back.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping as well. But for what we have, I think it's really important that the MPSA continues to try and get everybody together and bring this value to it. So I think it was a really good move by Mark and all those guys. And I think there will be people that gain from it. We signed up some people that are relatively new to the industry. And so we're going to actually log in and do it together in the conference room. Cool. I'm going to do it with them. And I just figured it'd be really useful from a sense that they're going to start hearing all these things that are new to them and seeing new faces and new names and all these things. And in that sense, it'd be really convenient that I'll be sitting right there with them to say, okay, that's how this connects to this guy, or, don't go out drinking with Danny Lesa. I mean, that's going to wake up bad for you.
Well, that's topic number one.
Right. Yeah. I would obviously start there.
Yeah, what made me think of it was we're having this video call, and you mentioned the MPSA. I wonder how that's going to work. But yeah, I can see them. I can see that it'll be very professionally done. I'd like to think that it would be very professionally done, I think it's good. I 100% agree with you. I think that the people at NPSA, Joel and Mark and everybody, keeping or trying to keep the group
Kaylee.
As cohesive as it was.
We got to give Kaylee a shout out too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Kelly, I think she's the glue. Actually, I think she holds everything together over there. She doesn't get the credit as she should, but at the same time, Joel does his part absolutely, and especially on the technical side, he's pretty good at that. But I think it's worthwhile. And again, just to try and keep our industry as cohesive as possible. Absolutely. Absolutely. And hopefully 2022, get back to real world, not necessarily even if it's just elbow bumps, that's cool.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Whatever it is.
We should do it in Nashville and come see you.
Hey, I'll send a note to Mark. He's not going to, I think my guess is they'll try to have it in Vegas again, because that's what attracts the most people. So if you're going to have a reunion, get it.
Nashville's the new Vegas, man.
You know what? It surprised me. It really did. I've been here a few years, and we haven't, recently we haven't gone as much as we would like to visit the Nashville and, Nashville proper and really get a feel for the city. But there's a lot going on in this town, and the COVID restrictions were a lot looser in Tennessee, just as they are in Texas. In some other states than they might be in a New York or New Jersey or something like that, or even Nevada for that matter, in Vegas. So the things that are opening up and the venues and all this stuff, it's pretty cool. I am hoping to kind of next, after a couple of months, to kind of start making my way back into downtown and all the other places. But for conventions, it's definitely, it's definitely a good place. Definitely a good place to hold one. And, the hotels, you go to downtown Nashville and there's like 7 or 8, 30-story cranes. They're just building
all the time.
They're just building and building and building and building. It's crazy. Even during the lockdown, things were going. But anyway, enough about Nashville. It is a good place. It is a good place, and hopefully, I would. My goal, my hope, anyway, is when the NPSA does have a face-to-face, I'm hoping to visit.
Sure.
I'll ask Mark if he can grandfather me, and I am a grandfather. Why not?
You are a grandfather. or I'll just get you a badge. You're fine. You can say you work for EMS.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a consultant.
Exactly. Well, in a way. So
yeah, but
so
I would, because there are a lot of people that I would like to formally, if you will, say goodbye to, and also some of them, hey, thanks a lot. Thank you. Thank you for the many years of support and everything. Like I said before, getting back to where we started, I had a good run with some good people, and I wouldn't mind. And even pre-pandemic, when I told people I was retiring, and well, are you coming to the MPSA? Rick Knuckles, hey Danny, a lot of people really want to see you again. Do you have a lot of friends? Lewis Nolan, I don't know if you know him in New Orleans.
Of course, over in Mandeville.
Lewis, yeah, same thing. Hey Danny, you got to show up. It's nice to hear that, and I would, C-Box, the same thing. I would like to do that. So depending on where it is, depending on where I am in my life at that time, I would like to come back and see people, But even aside from that, hopefully you and your family and your dad, and hopefully get together at some point in time,
Well, we definitely need to make that happen.
Share a drink. Share a drink, and
probably more than one if history is any sign. But so as we come right to the end of our episode here, do you have anything else regarding, lasting memories in the industry or forecast long term, or anything that kind of just strikes you about it?
What strikes me the most about this, and what changed this industry the most was, and you mentioned it when you were talking about your company and what you're doing, is technology. And the advent of technology and the rapid growth of technology, how that's changed this business is just, as many industries, but to be in an industry where you're directly affected by technology, from the first fax machine, if you still remember those things, to the first mobile phone, to the first PC, laptop. Now your iPhone is a mobile laptop. It's a laptop essentially.
Right.
It's not a phone anymore. A phone is secondary. It's social media and all that stuff. But technology, and how technology, leasing companies came into existence because of the inefficiencies in shipping lines. There was always an imbalance. Shipping lines always had an imbalance of containers. And
Right.
some smart guy said, hey, I'm going to start a leasing company, and you need boxes in Singapore? I got them. You need
Right.
boxes in China? I got them. Korea? I got them. That kind of thing. So when technology came along, and you're way too young to remember, but your dad will remember. You weren't even in the industry. Container movements were kept on what they call T-cards.
T-cards.
Exactly. And it was all handwritten. Everything was
Yep.
handwritten. It left the depot on 12/16. It entered Detroit on January 10th or whatever, that kind of stuff. And now, at the touch of a button, you have whole container history. You know exactly how much freight you're getting. The shipping lines know exactly how much revenue, how much profit, what the cost is. They have this ability, which is what led to some of the shortages, which is, technology today, when you could do an instant analysis of, hey, cost benefit, is it more beneficial for me to pick up cargo in the States, or piss off a customer and bring it back to Asia, but get 5 times my money on cargo? That analysis is instantaneous for them now. So you make that decision. Do I want to make my customers wait 3 weeks for a product, or do I pay? Do I bite the bullet and get something to them quicker? Yeah,
Right.
And that's what it is. So technology, again, from the first fax machine to the PC to everything else along the way, computerized billing, everything. uh, that changed this industry immeasurably, and it really enhanced. It cut a lot of jobs, just like technology does in a lot of places. It got rid of a lot of manpower, but if you were willing to change with the times, okay, so instead of being a key punch operator or equipment control where you kept everything on paper, get a new skill and become an analyst. Be enhance your marketing tools. That your skills, I should say. That kind of thing. So yes, people did get fired, people did get laid off, but at the same time, there were it also created a lot of new opportunities for people in a different field, maybe in a different skill set that you might need. But, unless you're my age, it's pretty easy to learn something new.
Right.
If you put your mind to it, it is, so I think looking back, I would say what stands out for me is the advent of technology and how that has really changed it. What does the future hold? Who knows, man? What we talked about before. Maybe you can look till the end of the year. If you're lucky with some accuracy, you can look to the end of 2021. But beyond that, it's really anybody's guess. I think, and I've mentioned this to you before. I think what you're doing is a logical evolutionary step for a depot. And I think other depots will be wise to follow your example, because the traditional depot business, it's not dead, but it's on its last leg.
It's broken. Yeah, it's definitely broken.
And it's tough to make. Can you make a profit? Of course you can. But my guess, and I'm not in the depot business, but my guess is most of the depot value is in the land that they own, if they own it. The rest of it is, who knows? It's a cost. It's an expense. But it should be pretty good if you can change. Again, these sound like cliches, but if you can change with the times, and if you can look ahead a little bit, and if you're a depot and you've been losing money for 3 years straight, pay attention. It's not something. It's telling you something. Don't keep thinking that it's going to rebound. No, things have changed. So I think that, and shipping lines are going to continue to merge. There'll be fewer and fewer leasing companies. What do we have? 5 or 6 now, big guys. Maybe it'll go down to 5, but there'll always be 5, 6, 7 major players. I don't think there's any more consolidation in the cards. Not like there was in the 70s and 80s when everybody was buying everybody else, and people, when the mantra was growth. We got to get bigger. We got to get bigger. Bigger is better. Bigger is better. Man, the strip club that works, but it's not always true. It's not always true in the real world. Efficiency, and that's what you get back to technology. Everything's just got to be much more efficient that way. So, to KJ, last words as to what the future holds beyond 2021. I think it's really hard. I think it's just a guess. It's guesswork. It's really guesswork for people. But I think it's more. If you force me to give you an answer, I'd say it's positive in very general terms. It's going to be positive. It's not going to be a negative thing. It's not going to be a negative thing. It'll be good. There'll be some good stuff going on. At least I hope so. So anyway, again, I don't know what else in the industry that really affected me like that. It didn't affect me, but that kind of impressed me, I guess, or left an imprint on me. That's about it. I'm trying to think, but that's about it.
Hey, we'll wrap on that. That's perfect.
It sounds really
positive. We'll end on positive.
So, KJ, I appreciate the information. I appreciate talking to you. I hope I gave you some good feedback on some things. I hope I answered some of your questions. Some things are different, like, why the shortage? Boy, there's a lot of reasons why. That's like 10 rivers coming together and overflowing, because that's all
and
it
we have
was.
to
It was
keep
all
it concise, so it's
Yeah, there's
difficult to
you know,
really do it.
the
But
driving force was that China's economy recovered first. That's the main underlying thing. The rest of it kind of stems from there. So, but anyway, like I said, I hope I answered some of your questions. I
no, you are
appreciate
awesome.
talking to you.
You too,
It's
brother.
great to see you. You're looking good. I know I got a few COVID kilos on me, and and the camera adds 10 pounds, right? So, man, I must look like a blimp on that side.
No, you look good. You look good. Cheers, buddy. I appreciate you very much, Dave.
Cheers. Clink.
It's good to see you, man.
Same here. Please say hi to everybody on your end, and do stay in touch. Let
You
me
got
know
it.
when this goes viral, because it's going to be a sensation.
Oh, like they've never known before. So thanks, man. I
Take care.
appreciate you.
Go home. Go home. Take care.